Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Distant Intimacy. I'm Curtis Shoemaker with my host as co-host, as always.
Craig Kikowski.
And we are honored today to be joined by the road warrior, Broadway veteran, Mr. Mark Aldrich. Yay!
Hey, guys.
Hey! And you're actually on the road now, unintentionally, still.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. I am in scenic, but very gray Columbus, Ohio at the moment.
Well, gray is their favorite color there, along with scarlet. So,
That is true. That is true. I'm hoping that the sky doesn't turn scarlet anytime soon. But
That's one of the signs. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
yeah, we don't need any more signs. I don't need more signs.
No signs. How are you doing, my friend? Well?
Yeah, holding up. Crazy times, but things are fine. They could certainly be a lot worse.
Okay. Well, as you know, we've been talking to everybody about their past, their present, some about the future, but I was doing my research on you, which is fascinating to do. And I was looking at your resume, and you do realize that as far as acting teachers go on your resume, 30 years out of William & Mary, you still only list as your only acting teachers Goodlin, Bledsoe, and Palmer. Have you learned nothing since you left?
No, they taught me everything I needed to know.
The Holy Trinity, they're referred to.
Yes.
Just doing a little John
yeah, well,
Goodwin,
that section of my
Alexander
resume
technique.
probably hasn't been updated in a while. Oh, no, you're frozen.
Or no, you're frozen. But anyway.
You're frozen.
You're
you're right.
frozen. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
We can still hear you, though. So.
I'm going to switch you over to my hotspot. And
we'll try it. You want to try that?
That's what...
Okay. I'll stop recording and come back then, I guess. This is good. That's a good look on you. Do you want your reading glasses? It's obvious you need them now.
No, I don't.
Vanity.
They're new. I'm not used to them yet. Oh, where'd you go? Okay. I don't know why it's doing that. I've actually been in this hotel long enough to now, and I'm not kidding, to now become an Ohio resident. And this is the first time I've had any trouble with the internet, so they knew Kurt was calling.
That's me.
Always Kurt's.
Always Kurt. So if we're going to continue up, speaking of William & Mary, you were Mr. Musical Theater. I mean, The Gondolier,
Yeah, I
Evita,
did musical theater.
Anything Goes, but that was your. I mean, that's what I.
This is really.
Okay. You're back.
You keep freezing.
Oh, see, we don't freeze to each other, just to you. This is our best episode yet, I think. This was. That's
no dead air.
No dead air. No dead time.
Yeah, it's going well. It's going really, really well.
Hang on a sec. Okay, we're back after a short pause there for the cause with Mark, Greg, and I. So I was calling you Mr. Musical Theater, and you said you were just Mr. Theater there.
Well, I meant not Mr. Anything. I did a lot of musical theater. I enjoyed it. Yeah. My first show was Fade Out, Fade In, which I know it's surprising to hear, but that's the only time I've ever done that show. I think it was the last time it was done. But I remember being so wide-eyed and intimidated by everything. The upperclassmen were like deities, and the professors were even bigger deities, and it was but it was exciting, and I think I was actually cast in Fade Out, Fade In a very, very tiny role. I can almost remember my one line. It might happen before the end of this, but I was cast in that even before I started classes, which should have been a clue that I was not going to end up pre-law like I thought I was going to be. Yeah. So we started rehearsals, I think, just before we started classes. I don't even know how that happened, but it did.
Did you keep another major, or did you go full theater major?
I ended up, you know what? I ended up satisfying my theater and speech major before I even knew that that was happening. So I ended up with a theater and speech major and a minor in sociology.
Because I remember obviously we did Gondoliers together, we did Evita together, we did Anything Goes together. You directed me in second season.
Self-torture and strenuous exercise.
Whoa, what was it called again?
Self-torture and strenuous exercise.
Wow, sounds like marriage in quarantine.
Ew.
Oh,
Give me a brief summary of that play.
yeah.
Um, lots of crazy people cursing. It was fun.
Great.
I was
I
a
remember.
meek
I remember
gardener.
the patron really, really didn't want us to do that show. He was, for some reason, he just loathed that show. I thought it was fantastic, so I did.
I remember Emily Deck as my wife, I believe, and
Yep.
somebody else in the cast. But I was kind of a milquetoast person who was obsessed with his garden, and there was a lot of yelling and screaming around, if I remember.
Yeah.
Um,
I loved it because I was casting you totally against what everyone thought was your type at the
right,
time.
which I enjoyed. Thank you. Yes. So now I remember when you graduated, you went off, and I think your first job out of college was the Mystery of Edwin Drood tour.
That is correct. Yeah, yeah. Different time and place. It was a non-equity tour. Um, uh, I actually did a summer of summer stock right before that up in Maine. But you know, that was short and almost more like summer camp than anything else. It was great, but it was different. But the tour was a pretty substantial organization and endeavor. We were out for 9 months, and I rode the bus and made lots of friends, many of whom I still have today, and saw parts of the country that I never would have seen otherwise. And it was, yeah, it was a real education. I'm not. It was a great springboard for a career. I'm not sure if I'd still be here if I'd struggled, you know, for the first year coming out of school. But I had some sense of stability, which of course we know is ridiculous to ever assume that that's going to happen.
Right.
But I did. I like had that for 9 months coming out, and I was with a lot of slightly older actors, so I learned a lot from them. And you know, the touring world has changed so much since then, and non-equity tours have changed so much since then. But I thought it was the best thing in the world. I'm sure if I tried to do it now, it would kill me. But then it was just like, you know, the world was my oyster.
I remember you came back for a visit, and I remember you were quite, without intentionally, you were quite the badass because you had your tour jacket. You know?
Yes.
You had the tour, the jacket, and that was, everybody's like going,
Yeah.
that was big man on campus stuff.
I still have that jacket, by the way. I do, and the hoodie.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Does it still fit?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Although, I mean, the jacket, it just hangs in the closet at my mother's house. But my mom still wears the hoodie. So there you
go. Now, you and I we've been friends for a long time, but we were both in DC at the same time. When you were working regionally a lot at Ford's Theater, you and Craig both have Christmas Carol, doing a lot of Christmas carols. But I remember you coming to New York and doing workshops. And I remember you were in, before you literally, broke onto Broadway, you were in a number of developmental musicals that just never made it. I mean,
Yeah.
There was like, I think, I can't remember them all. There was the one about the escarpment. That's all I remember is that one line, singing that line.
Yeah, that one was never going to go
anywhere. No,
yeah. We knew that. And in all fairness, like no one expected that to go anywhere. But yeah, at one point I counted it. There were over 20 shows that at one point on my resume that people had thought would have a life, if not Broadway, then something close to it, that never went anywhere. So I had the reputation of being a show killer for quite a number of years. Wow. Yeah. In fact, my current agent, who I love, they called me when I got my first Broadway show, and they were all on the phone. They were all online together, and all they said was, the curse is broken.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Now, that first one was Ragtime.
It was.
Now, that show, you came back in the revival, I believe,
Yes.
stripped down version, which everyone beloved and gave the show a whole new life. Did you get a chance to work at all with Terrence McNally, or speak with him, or is it more?
I did. We were. Yeah, no, they were all there. Lynn Ahrens, Stephen Flaherty, Terrence were there. E.L. Doctorow was even around for
Wow.
bits of the process, which is unbelievable now to think back on that. In fact, fun story, I found on my bookshelf during rehearsals of Ragtime a first edition of the book, which I didn't realize was a first edition until I opened it and realized what I had on my bookshelf all those years. So I brought it in, and I had E.L. Doctorow sign it for me, and it's now one of my most treasured possessions.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, including as well as my opening night note from Terrence and Stephen Lynn and I have worked together since then on a couple of things, and that entire team, and Marcia Milgram Dodge, our director, and James Moore, our conductor, the entire creative staff was just they were just wonderful, wonderful people who I hope I work with on a regular basis for the rest of my life, because they're just the best. Yeah.
We've all read recently, since we just lost Terrence McNally, about his career and the things he went through. And I saw the documentary that was done on him a few years ago. Is there something you'd share with us that just gave a sense of, because he seemed like such a genuine soul when he was working, and intuitive. And I was just wondering if you could share something you remember about interacting with him.
A couple of things. I mean, first is just his sheer humanity. He was one of the kindest, most down-to-earth people you will ever meet, which, given everything that he had achieved already before that revival, he would have been forgiven if he were a little less approachable and a little less human. But he really was. He just became everyone's friend, and having him in the room was not intimidating. It was something we looked forward to. And he and that entire team, the writing team and creative team, were not precious about their material. I mean, Ragtime had already been performed on Broadway. It was already sort of part of the canon, the musical theater canon. People thought they knew what Ragtime was, and it was sort of set. And all of them approached it as, what can we do to make this better? They weren't afraid to cut things. They weren't afraid to change things. And that was probably the most surprising thing to me, because when, with the revival, and I was new, it was my first Broadway show. I just thought, oh, we're doing Ragtime, so we're going to do what everybody knows as Ragtime. And they actually would tear it apart and look at each scene and sometimes even each line, and say, I think we can make this better. I think we can make this better. Oh, that works. That's always worked. And that part of it was interesting to me, to be in the room with like sort of these giants of the industry, and realize that theater really is this sort of living, breathing thing, that even though the first Ragtime is set in people's minds, that Ragtime was gone, and this was going to be a new Ragtime. And I've always sort of remembered that, that nothing is ever set. Every new production is a new production, and something is going to be different, even if you try to make it exactly the same,
Right.
Which would be a bad idea. But that was one of the things I remember about Terrence, is that he was just always, he was like your friend more than, this intimidating figure from, yeah, exactly.
But then you got to take Newsies from the start to Broadway. And I found an interview with you about Newsies, where you said that what you loved about it was that the power of a large group of men dancing when the show opened, what it was like to, that power of, like, not since West Side Story, that many men just danced on stage, and the power. And I was wondering for you, what was it like to be part of a group like that? Was it the twirling or the leaping that you found most challenging in that opening number of Newsies?
There's the handsprings, really.
Handsprings, really. Okay, right.
Yeah.
Because I remember
um,
dancing was always
no,
your your thing. Mm.
it was, you know what it was? It was the high notes, because I had to stand in the wing and sing really loud and really high because those guys were doing handsprings. So yeah, thank God I didn't have to do any of that or
Um,
try anything like that. But yeah,
oh,
that was an amazing. That was sort of a once in a career break, I think, because it was we tried out at the Paper Mill Playhouse in Millburn, New Jersey, and it was supposed to be a 9-week gig. Uh, Broadway was not in the plans, not in the works at all. It was actually sort of earmarked to be licensed to community theaters and schools, and they wanted to just. It was the most requested movie title for Disney to turn into a stage show at that point in
right.
time,
And
and
it's
and
kind
they
of
never.
interesting that all these animated films that are musicals they've done on Broadway, but that their one live action musical they already did was like almost like the last one to come, the one they didn't want to do.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Well, the movie didn't do so well,
right.
but it became a cult favorite, and what happened was schools were writing their own sort of unofficial versions of it, um, and and Disney saw an opportunity there and realized that we need to get in front of this. We need an official version of it, and then the New Jersey run sold out really fast, and got a lot of attention. And at that same time, Aladdin was in its development phase, but it wasn't ready to come into New York yet, and Disney wanted a new title on Broadway, and in it never happens that quickly, but within a few months we were open on Broadway, and it was supposed to be a limited run, and then it was just going to be 100 performances, and then the next thing you know, it's 2.5 years later, and then the tour went out for another 2.5 years. So that 9-week job turned into pretty much 5 years.
So
Crazy.
so is this, I don't know about Ragtime. So do you now have two original cast recordings out there for us?
Um, no, Ragtime didn't record,
Okay.
um, unfortunately. Um, I'm on a couple of other cast recordings, but the only original Broadway cast recording is Newsies.
Because I know
And
then you have Puss in Boots, which is your own little audio book,
yeah,
that was,
yeah.
which is interesting. And you are again, where, sir? Who are you?
I am Puss in Boots.
You are the Puss in the Boots.
Puss in Boots. Yeah, it was fun. That was so much fun. I'd never done a book on tape, and there'd only been one multicast musical book on tape before that anyone knew of. So it was sort of a seat of your pants, let's figure this out as we go along kind of thing. And it was so much fun.
Were
It was
you
a
influenced by Antonio Banderas at all?
no,
No.
no, absolutely
Okay.
not.
No. Okay. All right. All right.
No, I never saw that version actually. Somehow it slipped past me.
You carved out your own Puss in Boots territory.
That's
I
right.
did.
That's right.
There's so many jokes just right there, but I think we should just leave that.
You really, well, especially since you don't have headphones on, we should just leave that exactly
Yeah,
where it is.
that is correct.
Now, I think you're the only person I know who's ever performed in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Oh,
That that I know personally. I mean, I've seen, people I know musical, but you are actually my only friend who I've ever seen out there. What kind of I'm sure it's fun when you're in front of Herald Square and doing it, but what is that? What is that? A 4 a.m. call for that? It's
yeah.
gotta be, 40
I think
degrees outside.
Oh, that was bitterly cold. Our year was like frigid. And yeah, I can't remember the exact time. It was just 4:30 or 5:30, somewhere around there. So, you have an hour commute we met at the theater. So you meet at the theater, you get into costume, and then once you're ready, you go out to a bus and they bus you down to a holding area. In this case, it was some more buses behind Macy's, and it was so cold that we cut through Macy's, and they sort of held us at the door until the last second, and then we ran out to do our number. But yeah, it's very surreal. It's more like this huge Broadway mixer, because all of the casts are there in the same sort of confined space, and everybody's sort of festive because it's a holiday. but they're also sleep deprived, so they're a little punchy. So it's really fun. I'm so glad I did it. I would not want to do it every year because it's really early and it was really cold, but it was fun. It was really fun.
Now, did you do
And
that both for Newsies and My Fair Lady, or just My Fair Lady?
Newsies did it, but they only used the jumping boys,
The jumping board.
not the
Were you the
mean old
oldsters, the what'd you call
oldsies.
yourself? The oldsies, right? The oldsies.
Oldsies.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
There were no oldsies there.
sorry, we just got our because of technical difficulties. It says we're running slightly out of time, so
Oh, okay.
we still have a few minutes left. So you are the king of the. So I have to ask, in all your road travels, because you've done several national tours, where did the giraffe thing come from? You seem to have an affinity for giraffes these days.
Yeah, I don't know. It was I went to a zoo because I tend to get out and try to explore any city that I'm in. And I found, and I don't even remember where the first one was, to be honest with you, but I found a zoo where you could feed the giraffes. And I thought, well, that's different. I've never done that before. So I did, and then suddenly it became a thing. And I was going from city to city looking for opportunities to feed giraffes. And it, it sort of grew from there. I fed a bear. I fed a tiger. I've now fed a sloth.
I
So
was I was wondering with the popularity of Joe Exotic and the Tiger King, is Mark Exotic and the Giraffe King a possibility coming? I mean,
it's always a possibility, but I can't give for privacy reasons. I can't give anything away until the deals are signed. So
okay, but I
That's a
mean
new
those.
musical I'd be willing to see.
Oh yeah, the music videos for you,
you know
just
what's funny is I didn't want to watch that show. Like I was sort of it was everywhere and everyone was talking about it. I'm not, well, and I'm not. I don't need to see that. And then I realized that Carol Baskin's place in Florida I had gone to when I was on tour. I was like, well, now I have to see it.
holy cats and kittens. I mean, come on.
Yeah. So we tore through that one pretty fast. Yeah.
Was her place as seedy looking as it seems on?
No, it wasn't. Her place. I mean, it wasn't as sort of fancified as I thought it would be from looking at the literature before I got there, but it definitely they definitely painted a particular picture with that documentary that wasn't entirely accurate, although they might have had access to things behind the scenes that I didn't see. But I thought it would be a little more polished and scrubbed than it was, but it definitely didn't seem as dingy as it looked in the show.
Do you think you've seen where the bones are buried when you were walking around? Did you get that sense?
I hope not. But
Oh, who knows?
I would definitely go back now, but
Right. Oh, I'm sure attendance is way up there, which helps her out.
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
So besides your Broadway career, your touring career, your audiobook career, you also have your own show on the internet called Happy Hour Guys, where you
That is,
love of craft beer, drinking, and being on camera. That sounds like a smart move you made in creating that.
yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it's taken on a life of its own. It was one of those sort of for the love of it projects where I was a Travel Channel junkie back when the Travel Channel actually was about traveling.
Mhm.
And I had friends who we would go out after shows and talk about things like historic bars or things like that. And so we said, well, let's make a show. I would watch a show that tells me where interesting places to go to get an interesting drink. And so we shot a pilot together and said, well, now we're going to be on TV. And then no one watched it. And so after a while, we're like, well, we're bored. Let's just start doing stuff. So then we just started going places and shooting things ourselves. And then craft beer sort of became what it is today, which is insane. It's everywhere. But we just kept going. And so now we have over 350 episodes, and we have a lot of friends in the craft beer industry. We know a lot of the people who run the breweries, and I've made some really good friends and learned an awful lot from it.
But by
Yeah.
bringing a camera, You got comped all that beer and whiskey, didn't you?
A lot. Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah.
That helps.
That's just good
There's a
stuff.
lesson to be learned.
Oh yes. Oh, I will be your Padawan. That's for sure. So as we wrap things up, back to William and Mary, back to where this all began for us. You do remember your torture of me during Anything Goes, correct?
No.
When your line was, "I know Mr. Whitney's going to come in and say, 'Billy, where's the devil is my passport?'" And the audience never was in on the joke, but you changed the line every night, so I'd have to repeat it exactly like you had just said it for the gag.
Now that you mention it, yeah, I do remember that. That was fun.
Yeah.
We should do that again.
Let's do that again. So
That production, I have to say, of Anything Goes was so fantastic, and you were so great in it, Mark. And as a skinny freshman from Northern Virginia who had never been to New York, it really was like watching a Broadway show for me to see that.
Oh, wow.
It was so great.
Oh, thanks. And thank you for saying that. What a great cast. I mean, that was an amazing cast when you think about it, who we had up there with us.
Laura Reno, yeah.
Burke, and like you, and that whole cast was just fantastic. That was my final William and Mary performance. So it was
and that was
great
Jerry
way to go.
Bledsoe?
Jerry. That was Jerry. Yes.
That was definitely Jerry, yeah.
The only rehearsals where we ever had to watch Flying Down to Rio, and he made us watch the Fred Astaire musicals with Busby Berkeley, so we can see what he wanted us to do, because that's exactly what he wanted. See that?
Yeah.
Do that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is what we did. That's exactly what we did.
Yeah, we sounded and looked. We danced exactly like that.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Mark, so I know obviously what you're doing next is what any of us are doing next. Who the heck knows? I'm sure you're hoping that My Fair Lady will kick back off when we all kick back on. And we wish you the best of luck with that. So as we wrap things up, I've been asking everybody the same question. If heaven exists, what do you want Trish West to say to you at the pearly gates?
You're early. Come back later.
Excellent. And on that, everyone, thank you for another episode of Distant Intimacy with the king of the road warrior, the giraffe king, Mark Exotic, Mark Aldrich. Thanks, everyone.